Getting environmental permits for major infrastructure projects can be its own heavy lift. As the Trump administration looks to increase projects that advance domestic mineral production, there's an organization that can make that easier and faster. Joining me with more on the work of the Permitting Council is Acting Executive Director Manisha Patel. Ms. Patel, thanks so much for joining me this morning.
Terry, thank you so much. It's great to be here this morning on the Federal Drive.
Well, let's start by talking a little bit more about the Permitting Council. What exactly is it and what does it do?
Yeah, that's a great question. The Permitting Council is actually it's a permanent federal agency, small and mighty. We've been around since 2015, actually. We became a permanent agency in 2021, but at the end of the day, our mission is a simple one. We bring transparency, accountability, and predictability to the federal permitting process. And, it's easy to let sort of buzzwords and jargon like that roll off one's tongue. But at the end of the day, what we do, specifically and concretely speaking, is Congress has tasked us by statutory mission. Our job is to essentially kind of shine a light in what is otherwise sometimes perceived as a black box for federal environmental reviews and permitting authorizations. So anytime anyone in the U.S. is building something, there are usually federal permits that are required. And historically, going back 2, 3, 4, 5 decades, that process can sometimes become enigmatic and inefficient, I think, from the standpoint of project sponsors and even the public in the communities where these projects are sited. It's unclear sometimes which agencies are responsible for what components of the permitting process, or projects get stuck in an approval process for what seems to be, inexplicable and unknown reasons, and project sponsors feel at a loss because they feel like they have limited options to escalate issues to decision makers, and it's just sort of unclear who the right point of contact might be. All of this leads to, had led to sort of a general feeling that the federal permitting process, the environmental reviews and permits that are necessary to provide the protections for our natural resources and for the community's health and safety where these projects might be located, folks started feeling like that process just lacked transparency and accountability. And so in 2015, Congress passed Title 41 of the Fixing America's Surface Transportation Act. That's where the FAST 41 comes from. And what we do by statute, Congress has required us to create public timetables and a structure for the federal permitting review that gets posted on the federal permitting dashboard. And it's part of our job to convene agencies to really spur the collaboration and share best practices that we know lead to a better process. We coordinate those processes with the federal agencies and thereby create predictability in the process to avoid the delays and unexpected costs that have historically been sort of attendant to the federal permitting process. So that was a very big nutshell, but in a nutshell, Terry, that is what we do.
Is it mandatory that the Permitting Council get involved in any major construction project that requires an environmental permit?
That is a great question. So we actually run a voluntary process. Project sponsors come to us in projects that cover, and again, statutorily defined, but we cover 19 sectors, and it really spans the gamut. So everything from, manufacturing and energy production, both conventional and renewable energy transmission, ports and waterways, data centers, kind of the 19 sectors that Congress has identified for us, Terry, really do cover the gamut of everything. And so coming back to your question about, is it mandatory? No, it's not. It's a voluntary process. So if someone is contemplating building a project, a major infrastructure project, they know it's going to be $200 million or more and subject to environmental permitting and review under the National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA. Those are essentially the basic criteria, but a project sponsor would come to us and ask for coverage. And so in that sense, it's voluntary. We don't force people into this process, but really the benefits of FAST 41 coverage, again, as I was saying, it's the increased predictability, the enhanced coordination, attention from agency leadership, the transparency and the accountability, sort of having a clearly defined escalation procedure for when conflicts and roadblocks arise, which they inevitably do in federal processes. So not mandatory, voluntary, but really, and I'm biased here, but I can't imagine anyone not wanting to do it this way and rather choosing to kind of go the conventional route.
You must be the exception to the rule. I think most organizations, if they had the option to get engaged with a federal agency, would run in the opposite direction. So you must really be delivering added value. Can you give us an example of a case where getting involved with the Permitting Council really made a big difference?
Yeah. So we have a number right now for the covered projects we have. We're actually managing probably close to $115 billion in infrastructure project investment. And we've had success with projects across the spectrum. Again, one specific one that comes to mind, we had a transmission line in the Southwest, the Sunzia transmission line, and we helped essentially curate that process, right? I think a lot of what we do, to put it in plain language, we're like the permit whisperers or the Sherpas to help guide projects through the process. So our successes have been where we help project sponsors get, again, from soup to nuts, and we're doing it about 25% faster than if you don't use the Fast 41 process. But our successes include, like I said, a transmission line. We've got a number of offshore wind projects that were completed through efforts of the last administration. And this might pivot to, I think, one of the areas you'll see a lot of emphasis happening right now under the current administration. We've got a mining project just south of Tucson, Arizona, the South 32 Hermosa project that is moving along very well.
I'm speaking with Manisha Patel. She's the acting executive director of the Permitting Council. I love that permit whisper. It feels like you need a unit patch for that. But you are whispering to a bunch of new projects. You just announced 10 new projects that deal with critical mineral production. What's special about these, and how will the Permitting Council be involved with them?
Well, great question, Terry, because these projects, the critical mineral projects that we've posted for transparency, while they're not receiving the benefits of full Fast 41 coverage insofar as there isn't a dedicated Sherpa or a coordinated project plan, they are getting the benefits of transparency and predictability on our federal permitting dashboard, meaning that these projects will help sort of position the country and our economy to really start producing some of the raw materials we need for the 21st century. I think there are things, everything from lithium to antimony to, even if you think about in the agricultural sector, there are things that we extract like potash. One of the projects we have posted as a transparency project is a potash operation in Michigan. But the idea here is that hosting these minerals projects as transparency projects allows everyone from Congress to other federal agencies to project sponsors to the communities, again, where these projects are posted, to actually have visibility into the process. Because one of the things that's really important, while we absolutely bring efficiency and effectiveness to the process, we don't cut corners. So the point here is not that somehow or other getting posted as a transparency project under Fast 41 or being a covered project under Fast 41 is some sort of, magic bullet to circumvent the important environmental reviews and protections that we have. It's really actually a process for us to, again, give lift and visibility to these important sectors. And in the case of critical minerals, right, these minerals